Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining ARA's July Lunch and Learn Equipment Theft, Stories, and How to Fight Back. So we have a loaded webinar for you today. You're going to hear from 3 different members, their experience with theft. From across the country, you're going to hear from the Equipment Rental Guard team here at ARA, as well as Zach Johnston, the director of the Tri-County Auto Theft Task Force. We're going to try to keep this webinar moving. These conversations were awesome to have, but we did have to condense them for the sake of time. So if throughout this webinar you're interested in hearing the full conversations with any of these gentlemen, please in the Zoom chat write a note to us or email erg@ararental.org. We'll put that email in the chat so you can copy and paste it as well for any questions or if you want to hear more conversation from these group of guys. Additionally, we're going to put the link in the chat to sign up for text alerts. That's a common thread you're going to hear from every single person that we talk to for this webinar. Having a network of people to make sure that you are in the know if there's a suspicious renter in your area, or for you to let people know if there's a suspicious renter coming to them, is one thing that we can all do to prevent theft. So without further ado, we're going to get this conversation going. First up is Andrew Heesacker, the president of Arvada Rental.
It was spotted by a business where it was parked next to, and they got a funny feeling from it. And then we went down there, or I went down there, and it was our forklift. And essentially what had happened was somebody stole it from a customer's job site, and they took it to a yard in East Denver. They found the telematics on it. They removed the telematics, and then they actually took it to South Denver and used it, and then abandoned it after they shelled the turbo on it. So there was already a police report because the customer turned it into the police in this situation. They were a large general contractor, and they had insurance stuff. So we felt a little bit protected on that end of things because it was a large general contractor with insurance. We have protocols in place to make sure that anytime we're renting larger equipment that they have insurance cover it. So we felt good about that. And then essentially once we found it, we recovered it and let the customer know. And then they let the police department know to follow up on the police report of hey, this is what happened.
So, that is crazy.
Yeah,
and you wouldn't have thought anything of it because the customer was a customer that you've done business with and everything was above board, but it got stolen from their job site. Yep. So did you ever get any details of how it was stolen from the job site?
Nope. We were on a need to know basis and we didn't need to know. So
sure.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
We got our forklift back, and then the customer was happy because they were assuming they were going to have to put in an insurance claim for a 6,000 pound reach forklift that was at the time costing, I don't even remember, $120,000. But we had it repaired and it cost $8,000. So they were like, here's $8,000. They were really happy about that because it's costed $8,000, not 120 units. So yeah.
Did you ever hear, did the theft ring get caught?
Nope. They couldn't find them.
Yeah.
So it was unfortunate, obviously. And as a rental operator, it's easy to get discouraged by these things, right? And that's what I see a lot is it's not for everyone because you're lending your assets out to strangers, right? Stuff's going to happen. Things are going to get broken. Things are going to get stolen. It's just the nature of the beast. So you have to be able to sleep at night, knowing that something's probably going to happen. So, but us, it happens big ones, our insurance is only paid out on, actually, they haven't even really paid out on anything stolen. Knock on wood, obviously. Yeah, we haven't. I don't think about it. Everything, it's all just because of telematics primarily. Everything's been recovered. So all 3 times, what's been happening is the thieves will steal the asset and they will park it somewhere else for a period of time. So on the forklift that we recovered in the article that was from a couple years ago, that one was at that yard for like 4 or 5 days. And then a truck came and grabbed it and took it to California. So what they take it somewhere local, and if it gets found out, like it's there and it's abandoned. But if it's there in 3 or 4 days, then they know they can take it the rest of the way to where it needs to go. Because the second one, they took it to the yard on East Denver, took the telematics off, and then a couple of days later did their thing with it, because we didn't recover that one for a couple of months. So they had been using it the whole time. Then the third one, the most recent one, they took basically they took it, put it somewhere, and then if it gets recovered, it gets recovered. It's no skin off their back. Because like the cops, it's like, oh, we found it, it's there, it's abandoned, it gets impounded. But if it stays there because nobody notices it, then they can come back later and get it. It's absolutely wild. But that's
they didn't rip any tracking equipment off of it.
No. So the first one, they took the Genie branded telematics off. They broke it out because it was very obvious where it was. They did not realize that we had a secondary one.
Do you put a secondary one on everything?
Nope. We put one. It's not cheap. Like there's a subscription to it or whatever. So we put one. But on the one that happened a couple of years ago, the Genie one, it came with one from Genie. So but we didn't put a second one on. I mean, we had that thought, Chris and I, like, well, do we put a secondary one on stuff? But at that point, like, you're just doubling our cost. And so it's like, it's worked enough for us to not feel like we need to put a second one on. So
do you find that you're seeing more theft in these cases of theft from customers than you are theft of services or somebody coming in trying to rent from you that's not on the up and up?
I would say it's about even, like from a cost perspective. I think there's probably more quantity of theft of services, but on some level, like with all the legislation and stuff, like there's a little bit, like through collections and stuff, like there's easier avenues to kind of fight that. And it's it's going to sound weird, but it's a little less stressful, right? It's like, okay, they rent it, then they don't have the money, so we need to turn them over to collections. So we just handle it that way. Like it's what it is. Currently we probably have 5 to 8 of those in the queue with our attorney or collections attorney. So
what is your best advice for a business owner trying to, empower their staff to keep all their equipment coming back to you at the end of a rental?
Yeah, for sure. Have a process, ID, credit card, and if somebody wants to step out of it, if there's a manager on duty, you can ask them and they can make a different decision. If there's not, then the answer is no. They don't get to rent the item.
So that was Andrew's take on equipment theft from the Denver area. Next up, we have Dan Morris, the general manager of Kennebec Equipment Rental out in Maine. He is going to tell us a different story about how theft happened at his store. Before we get to Dan, I just want to mention our ERG ARA team is on this chat live. So if you do have questions throughout the webinar, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. Here's Dan.
About probably a year in is about when we started seeing, kind of seeing the patterns, but kind of ignored, I personally ignored it just because it was someone I knew and he was just, there was always a good excuse why. It was always someone else's fault. So he ended up with equipment that most of it was going to purchase. So it was a lot of his items that he was, not so much we don't rent to own, but it is, hey, rent for X amount and then we'll just, we can sell it to you and be done there. And so he got a bunch of equipment on different jobs, was always seemingly extremely busy, had stuff going in there, and he'd pay but never pay the full amount. It'd always be like bits and pieces. And it got to be where we'd call, check in on him. He'd send some money, send a check in, things like that. Just enough to keep us quiet, but keep us all kind of off our guard. And unbeknownst to me, he was also doing this to several other stores in the state. And so it went on, longer than it should have been. And what come about was he had some equipment out. He got behind, through the winter, which he was slowed down. Had a story about how a subcontractor kind of screwed him over. He's waiting for money from them. Whether he was or not, I wasn't sure, but kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt. And then got a call from a contractor that had a power trowel on a job site that had our name all over it and said, "Hey, this is in the way. Can you come get it?" And it was the one he had out on rent. So we just abandoned it on our job site. So we're able to get that back. Started making some phone calls, trying to get answers out of him. And it was just one story to the next and things weren't adding up. He come in and paid a good chunk of cash and then wrote a check bounced, post-dated check, and that bounced. So that got me wondering, at that point, I'm just like, get my equipment back. And we started finding out, like I said, a lot of it was just gone. He'd already sold it. He'd done what else with it. And then stumbled across a page on Facebook that someone had created that actually was his name and it had con at the end of it. And he pulled this stuff in North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, many other states. I think actually Minnesota, I think was one of the states that he had a case in against. Wisconsin, Texas, New York, a couple Canadian provinces. So, and he just seemed to skirt the law, got away from it. We took him to court for the bad check and the stolen equipment that he had that he couldn't bring back. And law enforcement at the time was willing to, they took that list that I gave him. I said, a lot of the stuff, it's on rental contracts. So with them in the state of Maine, it's still theft of services. But he had 30 days to, basically bring the equipment back or, tell us where it was or, it would be considered stolen. Unbeknownst to us, at the end, he is basically, they can prove $2.5 million just in the state of Maine that he had either equipment owed, damages, or monies he'd taken that he didn't do work for.
And that's just Maine.
That's just Maine. They would not look at the Attorney General's office would not look at all the other states because they said this is only a Maine case. Those other states can worry about their own problems, essentially, is what we got told. They ended up settling with him for their own case against them for $350,000 that he could pay over 15 years. But kind of a slap on the wrist. We still have an ongoing case with the bounce check that he never cleared, as well as the missing equipment. Most of what we had, people that worked for him that either hadn't been paid or customers he didn't work for that he did bad work for had held on the equipment. If he left it there just as collateral, once they knew the stuff was stolen, most of them turned it back in.
Wow.
We either recovered it or got it back. Some damaged. Most of it was stuff that we could repair and then put back into service or sell. We still have a few pieces of equipment that are out now that I know where they are, but we have to prove that equipment was stolen. Is the case that we have to present ourselves as a company before the DA will then reach out to the counties that the equipment's in and say, okay, that has to be turned over, because the people that have it also are saying, well, we have a bill of sale, we have possession. Some of the equipment, most of the equipment doesn't have titles, which is a problem on who has ownership. Possession is 9/10 of the law. So where I know where the stuff's at, I can't just go and grab it and get it back. Because if I breach the peace, then I'm the one that gets arrested.
So your situation's kind of unique because you knew the guy.
Right. And that was the worst, I guess, thing that, probably I could have done is we have safeguards in place, but, gave the guy the benefit of the doubt and then let it go too far. So I think with anything, the lesson is, now obviously now it's friends or not, I mean, he wasn't a close friend. It was just an acquaintance that I knew, but I just didn't think that they'd go to that point.
Yeah.
But the story, I mean, in some solace was I gave the same story that I got, others had gotten to and all fell for it. So, I mean, he was just good at what he did as far as that.
So did he do this with like other rental operations in Maine? Have you talked with other?
We got to where there was 7 other rental stores that I've talked to that he got either owed money for damages or they cut him off because they saw that where it was going, but there was no communication outward. Now normally if we have a bad guy come in, we will reach out to our the local stores, surrounding stores, and let them know, hey, this guy come in, he burned us, or he stole this, or he damaged us, just so not to tell them what they can do with their business, but that's where it's like, no, you can do what you want. But he owes us money or he did this. And most of them will, when they come in, will say, hey, no, I'm not going to rent you. Try to stop them in their tracks. And we've had cases in the past where we've had smaller stuff stolen and we've been able to track it down as this person or group went into other places. And I see
Hmm.
a lot of stuff, the mini skids that are stolen everywhere across the country, and those type of major crime rings up here. It's usually just a father daughter, father son. There's just a small. It's just a very small grouping of people that do it. So it's
Yeah.
fortunately we haven't had the major stuff, but I don't. I'm not foolish enough to know that it's not out there or coming because
Yeah.
if the area is right for it and they know they can get away with it, then they
Hmm.
will. But yeah, it's been I think a huge change, like I said, in the last. I mean, I've been with 25 years, but since the way we used to do things versus now, just to make sure that ID you have is legit. We invested in counterfeit pens and invested in the counterfeit license scanners just to try to pick up on those things. But we can have all the tools
Have
out there,
you
but
have you used it to find fake IDs? Have you had that
we haven't
experience?
found any. So that's one thing we haven't seen a lot up here. It's everyone's like, well, why do we keep doing this? We never find any bad ones. And I'm like, because at some point you will.
We are going to go from Maine now down to Texas with Ryan Peterson. He's with Bobcat of North Texas. Take it away, Ryan.
I work with Bobcat of North Texas. We've got 12 stores currently, kind of the North Texas, also out to East Texas, our furthest one being Longview, just a little outside of Tyler. One of the things that we've tried to do to, I guess, kind of fend them off is we communicate between our stores. Because it seems like when they are trying to attack one, they're going to multiple. They're calling the next Bobcat. And generally speaking, our group is kind of the next closest between all of our stores. So we've gotten really good at when somebody feels something is off. Um, we're kind of automatically sending an email out to all the branches saying, hey, you might have a potential shopper. We also try to set up we call it dummy account, where if we can get their phone number, we get their name, we get any of that, we go ahead and set them up in our system so that when, let's say, they do slip through, when they go to try to create a ticket, it automatically has flags blocking the account and has some notes on there as well. That's been a pretty good one just because a lot of times we're looking up customers by phone numbers, stuff like that. The network is kind of one of the biggest things that could help where, I know when I was talking to Cheyenne about it, it was like I was excited to see, hey, there's this system out there where, hey, we can just fill it. It's pretty quick, simple, and then it goes out an alert. And we were able to add all of the people in our group
Awesome.
to it. So
What's the environment like for you now in the middle of summer? Have you had any thefts recently?
we had one that we were able to kind of fend off. The
Can you
guy,
talk about that? Yeah.
yeah, the guy came out, and that's kind of another um, deal we've noticed is it's a lot of people using rental trucks and trailers. That is kind of another like red flag for us. A guy came out, had a U-Haul trailer on the back of his truck, kind of parked out of sight of where our counter staff could see him. Luckily, we had our service manager was walking out and saw our yard associate going to load him and said, hit the brakes, stopped, and we kind of, at
Wow.
that point, we kind of had to say, the unit started acting funny and stuff like that, and kind of unwind it a little bit. So that's the closest we've been, knock on wood, this summer. I want to say our last theft was probably, I want to say 6 months ago, and it was an MT. Uh,
Hmm. Do
yeah,
you do you know how it happened? Was it fake ID? Was it?
it was kind of all of the above. So it was a fake ID. It was out of state, uh,
Hmm.
which is another kind of red flag we get. The credit card did go through. So we rent out to, we call them cash customers. So we do rent out. They don't have to have a necessarily in-house account. Um, so his credit card did go through for the deposit, and it did have matching, name, everything on the card went through. Um, all of a sudden another store kind of sent out an alert saying, hey, there's a group on these MTs going around. And that's kind of when they figure out, hey, we're in trouble here. And by that time, the GPS had already been disconnected.
Uh, yeah.
It never saw it again. So
Hmm. Do you give your counter staff, full agency, I guess, to deny rentals if they're like, no, this isn't good.
absolutely, yes. That's kind of one of the biggest things we try to enforce. And it, you know, 99% of the time, if it doesn't feel right, it's probably something off. And we can, we hate to miss a rent, but, at the end of the day, it's better than losing a machine. And,
Hmm.
I honestly don't think we've ever really missed one on going with our gut.
So what is your advice to other rental companies across the country to try to prevent theft if you had to give them some?
One thing we've done, and this is, quite a few others do it, is most of the thieves out there who's targeting us know that most things from the factory come with some kind of GPS tracking method. We've gotten to where we're adding, an additional one that we can
Mhm.
hide. We've even contemplated adding a third one.
Wow.
Where it's, maybe a wireless one. It has saved a couple machines for us. So it's, and if you can just save one, it pays for it. The other thing that we're just recently starting, that was after that scare we had at our Cedar Hill store, was if it's a first time customer, we go out there after they've filled out their profile, the top section, we have them go out and actually verify the truck and the trailer. And we basically, the other end of it is sometimes we don't do a great job of making sure they're even have the right size trailer to haul our equipment. So there's a reason behind it too. But if they find that it's a rental trailer at that point, we shut it down. We
Yeah.
say due to liabilities, we can't, and we don't have to do jump through the hoops where we've done before, where guys are like, "Hey, we know we can't rent to somebody with a rental trailer, but
Mhm.
now we have to act like the machine's not working." It puts them in an awkward spot where we're just saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
liabilities due to this, we're shutting down." I think giving the guys as much ammo as you can is, like I said, eventually you're still going to get burned. It seems like they kind of keep figuring out
Yeah.
things, but I think the extra GPS trackers is something that's really it saved a couple machines for us.
So there you have it. Very different theft stories from all over the country, all ARA members and rental operators who are just trying to educate their own staff, educate our whole membership so that everyone can learn from each other. Next up, we've got a conversation with the Equipment Rental Guard team here at ARA, followed by a conversation with Zach Johnston, the director of the Tri-County Auto Theft Task Force. So stay tuned, continue to post your questions in the chat. So now we've got our ERG ARA team together, and just to back up so you understand why we've got three gentlemen on the call with us today, I'm going to throw it over to John, ARA's Vice President of the Equipment Segment, to talk about how Equipment Rental Guard came to be, and how it's growing. So, John?
Hey, thanks, Lauren. So, if you don't already know, equipment theft is a nine-figure problem for the rental industry. ARA over the last year has done a ton of research, talked with hundreds of members, and just in the cost of equipment that is stolen every year, we estimate it's at least 100 million. And I've seen other estimates that are much higher than that, but conservatively, we're talking about $100 million problem for the industry. And that doesn't even begin to get into the amount of time that's spent following up, trying to track that equipment down, to work with law enforcement, to file insurance claims and the impact of that. And so over the last year, ARA has spent uh, you know a significant amount of time and resources to develop a program that will help our members, hopefully first and foremost prevent theft, but then also to support ARA members when theft happens and what they can do and what kind of recourse there is. And hopefully we get to a point where there's tougher penalties that will further deter people out there thinking about stealing rental equipment. And so over the last year, we have developed Equipment Rental Guard, or ERG. And ERG is a multifaceted program that is really just in its infancy at this point. We launched it at the ARA show earlier this year in Las Vegas. We had a great press conference back in April in the Chicagoland area, announcing April as Equipment Theft Awareness Month, because from what I can tell, a lot of our members might see theft as a problem in their business, but they don't fully understand how big of an issue it is industry wide. And I think just like in so many other ways, working through ARA, our members can leverage the strength of the ARA community and the rental network to address an issue that really everybody loses from. There's nobody in the industry that's benefiting from equipment theft.
Thanks, John. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we are today, the end of July here. So to that end, I want to introduce Cheyenne Green and Ryan White, our ERG team here on ARA, and I want to let these gentlemen introduce themselves. So Cheyenne, do you want to start?
Yeah, that sounds great. I appreciate it. So my name's Cheyenne Green, based here out of Northwest Arkansas, and over the last several months, I've really just been doing a lot of traveling, going and visiting with members, explaining what ERG is and, what we're all about. It's amazing. We send out correspondence and, told everyone at the show what it was, but not everyone has a good, understanding what the program is and what all, it contains. So, I've traveled from Texas to Florida, visited Rhode Island. We've had some of our other colleagues, explain what the program is just this last weekend in Georgia, Iowa, and then I was in Missouri as well. But, just explain, how it is broken down through the text alerts, Rental U and the courses that we have in it. And so it's just been going out visiting and seeing, what issues our members, are seeing and having, and then explaining how the program helps out.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. If you don't know how to get a hold of Cheyenne, we'll put his contact information as well as Ryan and John's at the end of this webinar. But without further ado, Ryan White, care to introduce yourself as well?
Yes, thank you, Lauren. Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan White. I am the new Director of Theft Prevention for the ARA. Whereas the equipment rental industry is new to me, theft prevention and loss prevention is not. I come with about 20-ish years of experience in this field. I'm super excited to be here and to help out this industry-wide issue. When it comes to ERG in its infancy and what we've seen since April, we've heard you guys loud and clear. So some of the initiatives that we are working on building out and getting out to you rather quickly as possible. The suspicious renter database. We know this is top priority. It's top priority for you guys. It's top priority for us as well. We're looking to get that up and running as quickly as possible. Additionally, we're going to be looking for more law enforcement partnership at both local, state, and regional levels as applicable. As Cheyenne mentioned, text to learning is going to be really huge now and going forward as we build this database out. And then last but certainly not least, we're looking to offer additional resources to all of our members and potential members. And those resources are myself and Cheyenne to be there, to be available for you guys in the event that theft has occurred, both training in the theft prevention side and then post-incident as well, to be that additional resource that we might not have had in the past to help you out in the whole process from theft to reporting to hopefully asset recovery at the end of it. That's our goal. So we are here to help. We are here to help you. We are a resource for you. And as Lauren mentioned, towards the end of the webinar, you will have my information, Shan's information, and a nice email as well that can get a hold of both of us.
Great. And we're happy to have you, Ryan. So, John, can you talk about, we just talked about, what's on the horizon for ERG. Can you talk about what's currently available to our members in this program?
Absolutely, Lauren. So when we launched ERG earlier this year, we prioritized two areas that we developed programs for our members. One of those is training on theft prevention and asset recovery, and the other are our equipment rental guard text alerts for suspicious renters. And with the training piece, ARA has developed 4 courses. Those 4 courses are renter red flags, store prep and security, job site security, and asset recovery. And the whole purpose of those training courses is to educate not only business owners, but anybody that's working with customers on what they can do, what they need to look for when it comes to renter red flags first and foremost, because anyone working with a customer is likely to be faced with a situation where they may not be sure whether a customer is legitimate or not, or maybe there are red flags that they should be aware of that if they're not can easily lead to a piece of equipment being stolen. And who knows, that may be the last time that rental store sees that piece of equipment again. And so I think the training and education is truly a critical piece, and understanding that right now is the busiest time of year for a lot of our members. But as time allows, I couldn't recommend more for you to take 15 minutes and at least take that renter red flags course as a starting point. And then to, as time allows, expand and go through the rest of the training courses as well. I think in just over an hour of your time, you're going to have a well-rounded understanding of what you can do to prevent theft. I always like to say, focus on what you can control. And so the education and training is one piece of that. The other side is the ERG text alerts. So just like with so many other problems or even opportunities that we have as a rental industry that ARA can help to support, the text alerts is a free feature that members can take advantage of to opt in to send and receive text alerts about suspicious rental activity in your area. And so right now that's set up by state, and you can opt in for your state only. If you have a business that has stores in multiple states, or you're near state borders and you want to know what's happening in your neighboring states, you have the opportunity to select up to, you can select all 50 states in the US and provinces in Canada, or you can select just one. But I think it's so critical that we get members engaged in ERG text alerts, because the more members that are engaged and the more that are participating, the stronger that network will be. And that's especially important in your local market. So, especially if you're in a major metro area, talking with your rental friends about participating in ERG text alerts. We currently have members in all 50 states as well as in Canada that are signed up for ERG text alerts. Again, this program is just getting started. It's in its infancy, but we already have over 700 people signed up for text alerts, and especially in areas like Chicago and Texas and Florida, we're really starting to get close to that critical mass where members will be able to share and really help each other when they're faced with suspicious renter activity. And we've already heard about ways that members are benefiting from those text alerts. I think Cheyenne, you heard an example from a rental store in Missouri, how they were able to deter potential theft just through that text alert feature. And so, just to get started, I think that those are two ways that our members right now can benefit from the program. And then, like Ryan said, there's so much more to come with ERG.
One thing I wanted to ask you, Cheyenne, you said you've been going all over the country to meet with members. What are you seeing or hearing from them as far as equipment theft trends and problems they're having?
Yeah, I think for sure, theft by conversion is, the number one issue that, we see and hear about more than anything. Theft, of equipment at job sites, for sure, in the store happens, but it's not as big a problem as theft by conversion. And, it's really just trying to get out, in front of it and making sure that we're identifying those people, having the members identify those people that are coming into the store, throwing out those red flags and catching it on the front end, that way the next store doesn't get hit as well.
Yeah, yeah. Like John mentioned in the beginning, the prevention of theft, I think, is key, right? I think we all know that once your equipment leaves your store, the odds of getting it back or recovering it is so much lower than, keeping it in your yard where it's safe to begin with. So thank you, gentlemen. It's good to meet all of you. We're excited that ARA has a whole ERG team now dedicated to this issue that is industry-wide. Last but certainly not least this morning is Zach Johnston, the director of the Tri-County Auto Theft Task Force out of Kankakee, Illinois. We're excited to hear from Zach this morning. And once Zach has wrapped up, again, we'll kick it over to John Jinguinot and he'll do a live Q&A. Okay, so you were talking about what you're seeing in equipment theft trends and that sort of stuff at your local level, which is the Tri-County area. Can you just kind of explain where you're situated?
So we're pretty much everything southwest of Cook County in the city of Chicago is what we're seeing. But locally here throughout our area, throughout the Chicagoland area, it's actually throughout Illinois. There's kind of a couple different groups that we are seeing that are kind of targeting all of Illinois. We've had them, clear down near St. Louis, that they're falsifying documents, fake checks, credit card fraud. It's kind of a wide range, and it seems to be all coming back full circle back to a certain group of individuals, which we're still trying to figure out who that is. Still a work in progress. But so fake checks, credit card fraud, the theft by conversion stuff as well. Some of them are actually using, as far as we can tell, no fake IDs, but they might be using IDs of an unknowing party that might be, hey, we'll give you $50. We can go use your name to rent this, or we'll give you $100, wherever the case may be. And then they're renting them in that person's name. And then as soon as they're getting out of the yard, that person never sees it again. And then you're trying to track this person down to say, hey, where's our equipment that you rented from us? I have no idea, so that's kind of some of the stuff we're seeing, but a lot of it is being sold, turned around on marketplace within a matter of hours. We just had a similar one where actually somebody cloned a company. So they used the company that one of the rental agencies had been using consistently. So they cloned the name of that company. They spoofed emails to make it look just like their email addresses, but maybe changed one or two things, and then sent them requests to drop equipment off. Well, the equipment was dropped off in Kankakee County, literally a mile and a half from our office where we're at here right now, at an abandoned house. Said they needed this stuff. Well, then 2 months later, they figure out what's going on and it's gone. So the GPS ping was where they dropped it off last. So now we're 2 months behind, the 8 ball as far as, how we're trying to figure out where this stuff's at. And it's hard to recover. So that's just one thing we've seen. We don't know if it's, the same crew that we've seen. There's many different crews, it seems like, that's out there. It seems like the heavy equipment, cargo theft stuff is getting more common, is what we're seeing. So especially over the last probably since we all met in Morris and I started to learn a lot about heavy equipment, I've been doing auto theft for 11 years, and heavy equipment wasn't really something that we really jumped into heavily. And now we're kind of trial by fire because we jumped in with 2 feet after talking to you guys, starting to learn some stuff. And then it just helped out because then we started working these cases. And that case that kind of rolled all this into this big ordeal kind of started about that same week. So we learned a lot, from that, and then kind of it's evolved and it's still ongoing. And, I'm not bashing anybody because everybody, kind of, they're con artists. So their thing is to be as convincing to you, the company, as they can be to make you feel comfortable. But if, somebody shows up with a check from a construction company and they say they're out of Michigan, and they're showing up at your business, which is 150 miles away from where they say they're from, they're in a truck with Illinois plates on it. Just think of the red flags, so they're walking in there and they're buying something top dollar, no business person is going to go in and buy anything without trying to get a deal, or at least negotiate in some sort of way. You're asking 38,000 for this. I'll take it. Here's a check. Be like, hey, can you come off of it a little bit? Can you go 30? How so 35? It's just the way sales business goes. It's like buying a car. No one's going to go in and buy a car and try and pay exactly what the sticker is for it. Those are the things to think about.
So what would you tell companies? Renter comes in, they make the sale, they've rented out the equipment, but they know it's stolen. What should they do?
So again, it depends on state by state. In Illinois, technically there are laws that help with, the theft by conversion, things of that nature. Or if you realize that, hey, the next day the credit card's declined, or you realize that, somebody had some sort of credit service and calls you and like, hey, it says that my credit card was used there, and it's sort of some sort of identity theft or something like that, it can be reported right away then.
Can you talk identity theft? So I just want to make this distinction because what you just said, if somebody used someone else's credit card, that's identity theft.
Yep.
You can
all
the other rules are out the window.
Yeah, all the rules are out the window. In Illinois, I'm assuming it's probably that way in most other states just because of the fraud aspect of it. So, hey.
Does that work for someone else's driver's license too? Or what are the other identity? Okay.
So if they're coming in there using an ID that is not theirs, but you're going to get good fake ones, you're going to have, somebody could walk in there with an ID with their own picture on it and all my information and walk in there. They're going to, there's people out there, that's what they do is, hey, go to CVS. We had a ring years ago that they were making fake IDs in the suburbs of Chicago, and go to CVS, get a passport photo, bring it to me. So
that's identity theft.
That's identity theft. So if they're using a fraudulent ID, if they've used a fraudulent check, if they've used a fraudulent credit card or something like that, and say, hey, we rented it for 5 days, and on day 2 you start finding this stuff out, it can be reported stolen right into there.
Okay. And if that is not the case, or you don't know that right away, then what do they do?
So if a case like, a theft by conversion situation or something like that, somebody comes in, rents stuff, you think everything is legit, and you have a contract that says, they rented it on the 12th of July, and today is July 15th, and they haven't returned it. You guys have tried to make calls or reach out to them, whatever the process may be of each individual company. As far as that concerned, if they don't respond to you and don't return it, Illinois law states now what you can do is send a demand letter. So draft up a general demand letter that every company should probably just have a Word document of it, and then you can just fill it in. Even if it's, something you write in, but a general, on such and such day. So let me back up a little bit. So they come in, they present you your ID. So they give you 123 Main Street, as far as an address in the town that they live in. So that's the last known address you have on file for yourself, for your company. So send that demand letter to that person, to that address that they used when they rented it. You send it off certified mail. This, again, Illinois law, each state might be a little bit different. So you send it off certified mail. So go to the post office, get a certified receipt, get a tracking number, it gets sent. So once you send it, and then it's delivered, so then you'll get your receipt that it's been delivered or it's been denied. So maybe it's been sent to an address that's abandoned. So that's fine. That's all you need to know. So once that's sent, within 3 days of sending the written demand letter, so you send a demand letter, July 15th is the day I send it. You send it off July 15th, July 18th. You haven't had that property returned back to you and you know it's been delivered or attempted to be delivered and been sent back, you can now call the police and file a report. So once you do that, make sure you have the contract in hand, which, with the dates you're supposed to, they rented it here, they were, we're supposed to return it there. The copy of the demand letter, the receipt showing it was sent, the tracking information, all that stuff. Any other information that would go along with it, a copy of their ID, preferably it's nice to have some sort of color digital copy. Now we can try and use that color photo, which is much better than a Xerox black and white, to try and send off, see if we can get any sort of facial recognition to try and identify who that person is in the picture. And then there's other cases where we have people in our industry in the law enforcement side who are, the ID theft gurus, who have a database of thousands and thousands and thousands of IDs, and you can send them that ID and they'll be like, oh, that picture's been used 15 times, with these 15 different names. So, and then whether or not they've ever been, positively identified as far as who that person may be. So just make sure you have all that in hand. If you call the police show up. And we've talked about this before and so many different times, and we still get it sometimes from different prosecutors. Again, we work in 5 different counties, and each county might have a different philosophy on what they think is a civil issue opposed to what they think is a criminal issue when it comes to rented equipment, rented vehicles, rented anything. So, but this statute, it falls under the theft, statute in Illinois. And it's just basically states it protects you from that. Any equipment rented that's over $500. It doesn't matter if you rent, card tables to somebody's having a party and it's over $500 and they don't return it, or you rent them a bulldozer, or you rent them, a skid steer or something like that. But that's most of the stuff that we're seeing on our end, is the smaller stuff that they can get into, smaller trailers, etc., to be able to move around. So.
What should people not do if they know their equipment is stolen?
Don't go try and get it yourself. Don't, again, like we said, a lot of this turnaround is going on marketplace right away. And we've had some companies that have been like, we went and tried to buy our stuff back. We wound up, in the middle of a not so good neighborhood somewhere in the south side of Chicago or something like that. You're just going to get yourself in a situation you don't want to, because, they're criminals. At the end of the day, they're criminals, and they don't care who they steal from or anything like that. And if you're like, yeah, I'm going to give you $15,000 for this, I'm going to show up thinking you're the buyer, well, there's a good chance maybe they might rob you for your $15,000, because they're going to tell you, we want cash, or we're not, So there's so many different factors that you just put yourself in a situation that makes you even more vulnerable, and you don't want to get injured. You don't want anything like that to happen. You don't want to, obviously, show up and lose more money out of what you already have. So just contact the police, give them all the information you have. If you have GPS coordinates, stuff like that, but just remember, the police GPS information is, has to be exact and precise in order for us to do any sort of acting on it, as far as going to a location. If it's in a building, or if it's in a storage facility, or if it's in something like that, you can't just say, hey, it's hitting here, and then we show up and it's a warehouse, or it's a, storage facility of, each individual or rented, garages or something like that. We have to be precise as far as where the ping is coming from, so we can, if it comes down to getting some sort of search warrant or something like that to try and get the property back, we have an exact location, because we can't go in there and, hey, we're going to go hit 50 different places and see what we come up with. It just doesn't work that way. So we just had one last week. We had a incident where a skid steer was stolen off a construction site, and they made a report with the police department, and there was not a whole lot to go on. Well, I think it had Bobcat's GPS still on it that was functioning. It had a secondary GPS from the company, and they also had an Apple AirTag on it. So they pretty much, and they called us. I took the call, gave coordinates. We went out, and it was a kind of a wooded area. And the first coordinates they gave was kind of like across the street, and it was just nothing but wood. So it's like, okay, well, it's showing. So then I talked to the lady. I'm like, send me all the pings you have in an email on the map. And then we determined it was on the other side of the street on a property that was more accessible. We went back there and we found it. So happy ending, they were able to get their Bobcat back. So the property owner said that he bought it from a third party. So again, it's getting stolen, getting sold, and then it's changed hands a few times before we were able to recover it. So it's hard to charge, but at least we're getting back, the equipment that way, and people aren't out, quite a bit of money to replace it. So